Well, good afternoon. Once again, I find myself drawn to the archaeological issue and the archaeological issues concerning the Bible, the ancient Near East, and the Book of Mormon, because critics still, and I doubt they ever will, they still do not get the issue. They do not understand what archaeology can and cannot do. So I've got a special treat for you in this video. Ernest Wright, in an article called What Archaeology Can and Cannot Do. This is in a book edited by John Meyer and Vincent Tollers, The Bible in Its Literary Milieu. You can see it there. This is a nice selection of articles on various aspects of biblical scholarship. He discusses the ideas of the limitations of archaeology. Make no mistake about it, archaeology has its strength. I'm not anti-archaeology. I am all for utilizing whatever tools we can to bring to bear an understanding of the ancient Near East. However, that being said, I think it's time to be a little more realistic. Now, I've repeated this before in some of my former videos, and it bears repeating again, that no qualified, legitimate, biblical archaeologist and scholar has ever, anywhere in print, from the 1700s forward to right now today, no biblical archaeologist that I'm aware of has ever indicated or written or said, with archaeology, we prove the Bible. We can prove the truth of the biblical record through archaeology. I have challenged the critics. That is their way they present the argument to me. They say, well, the Bible has been proven archaeologically. The Book of Mormon has nothing in its favor. I have asked them again and again and again, demonstrate to me that that philosophy is the basis of biblical archaeology, and to date, not one has ever demonstrated that philosophy. Not from the biblical archaeologists. That is not what they are propounding, and neither am I. In my videos on the Book of Mormon, I've said several times, I'm not proving the Book of Mormon true through discussing the evidences in its favor. I'm simply demonstrating exactly what the biblical archaeologists show through literary analysis or archaeological discoveries or analysis of documents, comparative, philosophical, religious, ancient historical treatises through parallels. I am establishing the genuine, authentic background to the Book of Mormon. That is what we're looking for. In history, you deal in probabilities, not proof. You deal in possibilities, not proof. When you have a critic who contends seriously that that is a cop-out, and it is only, we take that approach only because we have no proof of the Book of Mormon, you may safely ignore that critic. They haven't got a clue what they're talking about studying history. I majored in history. I absolutely know that is how history works. When you get to the probability and the possibility, you're as good as you can get in the study of history. Wright says on page 169 in Meyer and Toller's book, with regard to biblical events, however, it cannot be overstressed that archaeological data are mute. Get this. Anybody who studied biblical archaeology will recognize the name Ernest Wright. This is not a Mickey Mouse wannabe fly-by-night scholar. This man is one of the top. And he says, with regard to the biblical data, archaeological information is moot. Fragmentary ruins preserving only a tiny fraction of the full picture of ancient life cannot speak without someone asking questions of them, and the kind of questions that archaeologists, historians, linguists, etc., the kind of questions the scholars asked are part and parcel of the answers heard because of predispositions on the part of the questioner. Archaeology can prove, and he's got this italicized. You think I'm kidding, don't you? Let the backyard professor teach you something here, huh? I don't know if you can see that or not. Oh, heck with it. Archaeology can prove very little about anything without minds stored with a wide-ranging variety of information, which carefully begin to ask questions of the mute remains in order to discover what they mean. It is all too easy for lack of information and imagination to gain less than the remains can supply, or for fertile imaginations to suppose that the ancient trash heaps tell them more than a controlled mind can believe they do. It is small wonder, then, that disagreement and debate arise. A destruction layer in the ruins, get this, when we find Zarahemla, it's not going to be a fully developed, well-preserved city in the jungles of Mesoamerica. That's not what we're going to find. We're going to find a ruined city. Listen to what G. Ernest Wright says about the ruins. Listen to this. A destruction layer in the ruins does not tell us the identity of the people involved. The ruins themselves does not tell us the identity of the people involved. So, the critics continually, stupidly, continue to ask me, where's Zarahemla? As if that's going to do spit for anything. If we find the ruins of Zarahemla, it's not going to prove Nephites existed there, or the Lamanites existed there. It's not going to prove the existence of Alma the Younger, of Nephi, of Gimgimno. It's not going to prove the existence of anybody mentioned in the Book of Mormon. The ancient cultural and political horizons and sequences can only be reconstructed by hypothesis, not fact. We are not dealing with fact in an archaeological ruin, people. We are dealing with a hypothesis from every kind of critically sifted evidence available. At some points, more data are available than at others. Hence, the historical reconstructions have only varying degrees of probability. We don't deal in proof when we're dealing with biblical archaeology. Any critic who says we have the Bible proven while the Book of Mormon remains unproven, I promise you can safely ignore, because they don't have a clue about either the Bible or how archaeology works. Whatever other conclusions they rant and rave about and come to, you can completely safely ignore them and save your lifetime for doing something constructive instead of worrying about that ridiculous critic argument. That's what I've come to do. There's no point in even talking to those kind of critics. It's not necessary for you to have to answer their questions to their liking. I tell them, go get your own education. Final proof of anything ancient must be confined to such questions as how pottery was made, what rock was used, and what food and fauna were present. Certainly that proof does not extend to the validity of the religious claims the Bible would place on us, and we must remember that the Bible is not a mine for scientifically grounded certainties about anything. Inscriptional evidence is of exceptional importance for biblical backgrounds. That is why we get pretty excited when we find evidence such as the Lachish letters, the Bar Kokhba documents, the Rosh Hashanah texts, the Nag Hammadi, the Dead Sea Scrolls, etc. Because inscriptional evidence is exceptionally important. It's much more important than finding a ruined city. Who knows who was existing in it, how big it was, how important it was, or what the people in that city believed. You'll never know any of that based on the ruins of a city. But with inscriptional evidence, now you get the information. The idea of proof, Wright gives us absolutely conclusively the actual biblical archaeological philosophy of how archaeology works in conjunction with the biblical text. He says, archaeology provides evidence to be critically sifted. It then is used along with other critically assessed data where it exists. We have to have the data first in order to form hypotheses about the how, why, what, and when of cultural, socio-political, and economic affairs in 13th century Palestine, for example. We don't discover facts and proof. We gather what evidence we can, we sift it critically, and then we present a hypothesis. That's how biblical archaeology works. These hypotheses will either stand or be altered as new information makes changes necessary. There is no finality of biblical archaeology. It never has the last word on truth. That's what he says. These hypotheses will stand or be altered as new information makes changes necessary. Final and absolutely proven answers are impossible to provide. This is on page 170. Final and absolute proven answers are impossible to provide. One generation's questions may not be another generation's questions. And in every case, the questions asked are integral to the answers. Thus, one generation's research differs from another generation's research. He says, the controversial use of the term proof in ways inadmissible, even absurd, with regard to any past cultural, political, socio-economic history. No one uses the concept, the idea, or the word of proof when dealing with biblical archaeology. He said that on page 171 and 172. Whether it is Trojan history, Phoenician history, or what history remains in the book of Joshua, we must begin with the fact that we have actual texts. Interesting. These must be interpreted by means of literary analysis available to us. Then we must reconstruct the archaeological and ecological context as best we can in the given area and in the widest possible context. Only then can we examine the question as to whether the one illuminates the other, or whether a reasonable hypothesis can be reconstructed which best explains what we know at this time. You notice there's no finality and proof, and ta-da, we're done. We found the ancient ruins of Jericho. Therefore, wow, the entire book of Joshua is true. That is not how it works, folks. You will never prove the Book of Mormon true, even when Zarahemla is found. I promise. That's not how it works. The dictum of Father DeVoe, one of the absolute top-notch Dead Sea Scroll scholars, here's what DeVoe concluded, and this is axiomatic. according to G. Ernest Wright, that means this is the base reality and truth of all knowledge. In the biblical archaeological world, this is axiomatic. Archaeology does not confirm the text, which is what it is. It can only confirm the interpretation which we give it. Conversely, archaeology dealing with the wreckage of antiquity proves nothing in itself. It must be analyzed in a variety of ways. And if you're up on biblical archaeology, they're still discovering new ways to analyze the ancient ruins and the ancient places. Now we're discovering new methods of extracting yet more information, of information we thought was final 75, 85, 100 years ago. And we're coming up with different answers than what they did back then on the Bible. There's no finality here. None whatsoever. This is how biblical archaeology works. Ambiguity and relativity enter every sphere of human activity. Some minds rise above others as master of their peers, but the solid proofs, which so many assume possible at the end of either scientific or historical work, cannot be attained by finite beings. That is his concluding thought on page 172. So I'm here to tell you, teaching you a quick micro lesson on biblical archaeology and what it can and cannot do. I'm here to tell you truthfully, whenever a critic brings up the idea that we have the Bible proven through archaeology, but the Book of Mormon has nothing, you can completely forget all the conclusions that critic will come to, because they are absolutely wrong. Fundamentally so. They have nothing to add to the discussion. They are too ignorant as to the true nature of the Bible, the Book of Mormon, and archaeology.